And we're live. Welcome back to State of the Networks. Rock and roll. What's going on? 609 OTA. Well, when Helium Moon? I don't know. We'll have to see. So today is the 13th of November, 2024. We are what is it? 2 weeks post-election, something like that. Maybe a week post-election. Maybe 1 week. And it looks it's looking pretty good for crypto. So you got to be really careful with all this stuff. Not financial advice, but it certainly looks like the start of the bull run as much as we can call it, but could be totally wrong there. Don't bet anything you can't totally, you're not willing to lose. Okay, so let's kick off all the deep in news. The intent here is to give you guys about 10 or 15 minutes of all the deep in news out there, and then shoot shit for as long as we want to on other topics, but to make it so that you can pretty quickly get all of the deep in news that's out there that's worth knowing about. So top of the hops, Onocoy. Winners announced for the Onocoy Explorers Challenge. They had a challenge where you could earn a bunch of, I want to say, Bono, which are their test tokens. And I think they had 5. So the challenge was you would use their tool to estimate earnings in a place. You had to talk about why you thought the place was pretty cool. And they picked people depending on what they liked about what they said. And they also did 5, I think, random raffle picks. So here comes Joey. Cool. Stand by. There you go. What's up, Joey?
Morning. Pulling stuff together on my end.
Okay. Badass.
Technical difficulties, as it usually is.
Yeah. Those always come. Okay, let's
Yep.
see. I'm just burning through the deep in news. I'm getting 2 antennas in from Calian, which is a fancy GNSS antenna maker. One of them looks like it's about $4,000 new, and the others I saw it $1,500 on eBay. Super expensive antennas. And the question that I asked these guys that they're helping me to answer is it worth it to buy these super fancy antennas and put them up? Are you going to earn way more tokens for doing that? And they were kind enough to send these down from Canada. I will be testing them for the next, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. I think I've got them for 2 months. And then we'll post the results and push them back out. So that way you'll know if it's worth it to spend $4,000 on an antenna. What's up, Zim? What's up, Derek? What's up, Siegfried? Ed, good to see you guys. I thought that was kind of a fun thing to do. And then the ongoing, I should probably put Onocoy up here so you can see what I'm talking about. Ongoing tests on my non-penetrating roof mount, which we talked a little bit about last week, are showing that even when I drop the antenna down and just put it almost directly on the non-pen roof mount pole, it's still a little bit too shaky, but I'll confirm that in the next couple days. Over at Anyone, I went up to USC this last Friday on their behalf and gave a 15-minute talk to a bunch of students to kick off a hackathon. That was pretty cool. Frank Mong was in the room. Always good to see Frank. I missed you, Joey. I think, were you down there for that or no?
I was in Ann Arbor, and I'll give a little
That's right.
update on that later.
That's right. You're
Yeah.
now you're out of we're doing separate things. So if you want to watch either the highlights of that video or the video itself, I've got links down in the description. This week, the big news in kind of crypto as a whole is that Devcon is going on in Bangkok, Thailand. I did not go to that one. Pretty clearly, here I am in San Diego, but I think we're going to see a bunch of ETH news, and kind of combined with the recent U.S. election results, I think we're going to see ETH to kind of continue to go up. But I haven't checked the prices today, so maybe I'm wrong on that. Helium, the big news is HIP 138, the return to HNT. I've got links down in the description, all these stuff if you want to read more about it. I will talk a little bit more about this return to HNT thing in a minute. My first take on that is that I'm curious because we basically launched, when I say we, I mean the Helium community, launched the split to IoT and mobile right at the beginning of the bear market. And so I'm curious if it actually was a really good thing and it just was poorly timed, or if it's really good to return to HNT, but we can certainly talk about that later on. There is a meetup for Helium Mobile happening in Seattle tomorrow, the 14th, at what is it, T-Mobile's 5G hub. And then I saw that Helium made the Coinbase 50 index. They're pretty pleased with that. I should probably do my fancy overlays, since Kevin at Flywheel Systems spent so much time making these things and making it so I could look good. Let's see. In Hivemapper news, my Hivemapper isn't working. Like, I can connect to it and I can see the dash cam, but it's not downloading anything. It's not doing anything. So I'm working with their support to troubleshoot it. I've had it going basically since the HDCS. Ooh, you got your shirt on. Nice, Joey. Came out. But Yeah, I'll see if I can fix that. They've got new bursts open in the LA and the Phoenix area, and they are looking for commercial fleets. So if you know anyone running a commercial fleet, you should reach out and figure out how you're going to get an affiliate sale off of that. Over in DIMO land, they've announced a Wi-Fi or a partnership with WiFiMap. So Dennis over at WiFiMap, that's pretty cool. I like the Zoom, Joey. And they're also, let's see, doing this Midwest Blockchain Conference. Joey's going to be there, and we're going to talk more about that in about 5 minutes when I finish up with this stuff. In Wingbits land, they have announced their GeoSigner. They're doing production updates on their GeoSigner, so the little device that you're going to plug into the kind of original DIY Wingbits things that we all started up in the last year. They'll be shipping that mid-December. There's nothing for you to do right now, but expect in the next week or so, they're going to be shooting out emails requesting your addresses. Pictures of the device was released. Used a $1 GPS chip, Sharp Eye on Ductator's part, by the way, that is made for drones. And he was saying that this chip is super good. It's pretty cheap on Alibaba, $1, maybe it's $6 if you're not a first-time buyer or whatever. But he said it's really fast, picks everything up. So kind of cool to see what they're using on these various chips. And there's a link in the description to that chip. I actually spent some time today working on the description, so it's more useful than it normally is. In Spexi land, I think they had just announced, or they're announcing that they're opening up Chicago. They've done it now, and there's 27 Spexigons available in Chicago. So if you're flying drones in Chicago, go crush. Srcful has talked about, and oh yeah, great. We've got the new logo. Cool. They're sorting out bugs and issues in the dual mining beta. So if you're doing the dual mining beta thing, expect that there's going to be issues. I mean, that should be part of a beta. I'm always surprised when people are in the beta and they're like, this thing isn't working. I'm like, it's a fucking beta, for Christ's sake. So it's always funny to me. But yeah, good to see those guys hustling. In WeatherXM, they've announced, and I feel like this is the second time this year they've done it, but maybe it's passed so fast that I missed it, or they're announcing next year's license. But the way that they sell their data is through the sale of 4 commercial licenses that people can then turn around and sell the access to anywhere else. And I want to say it's 100,000 WeatherXM is the bidding starts to buy one of those licenses. So you know that the WeatherXM, the company, will buy one of those licenses from WeatherXM, the foundation, whatever the two things are actually called. So there's really only 3 other licenses to sell. If you're using it, and those are for commercial use, if you're using it for academic or personal use, like I use WeatherXM to feed data in from the weather station. We pull data out there to watch the wind speed and then compare that against the shake of the Onocoy station. That's free to use that stuff because it's non-commercial. Although I guess they could come after me because I'm the Gristle King thing is commercial, but what else? I don't think WeatherXM is going to come after me. And then the last thing I've got today, I don't have a overlay for it, but it's XYO. And funnily enough, XYO has been doing deep-in since 2012. I'll be recording a deep in state with them in about an hour with Marcus. Super cool. Two super cool things about them is they've been doing IoT and deep in since 2012. They were there way before we had seen this model in Helium. So I'd love to talk to them about their marketing for deep in, because it's like, fuck, if you guys are doing it, how come everyone didn't know about it? And the second super cool thing is they are based out of San Diego. So I actually get a chance to sit down with Marcus here in my hometown. Let's see. I saw that Coinbase had a piece on governance issues. I've always wondered about this. Governance is super tough to figure out. We all like to think that like everything is super decentralized and it's awesome and everybody can vote and one token, one vote, or whatever it is your position is. But as it turns out, governance is super hard. And this Coinbase piece talks about all of the challenges. In that there's a dude, I forget his last name, Andy something up at Stanford that looks at all these DAO governance things. So if you want to dive into it, there's plenty of resources on the web. Max and I have talked to, is it Gary? Fuck was his last name over at Harvard, but he's been teaching about governance for ages and ages. And the takeaway we have from that is that governance is hard. So if your project is not getting it right, it's not because they're stupid or slow or not putting assets to it. It's that figuring out fair governance is pretty hard. I've been beta testing some crypto tax tools. I don't think this is in the description. This is all top secret from redacted user, and super cool because they found a bunch of wallets that I forgot about. So that was kind of rad. Last thing I've got before we kill this or turn this thing over to just shooting the shit with Joey is make sure that you check out Flywheel Systems. Link to those guys is down in the description. They are raising deep in and Web3 awareness with every design and deployment. If you're looking to work with a project that is, or working with a company that's deploying a bunch of these things, check out Flywheel Systems. That's all I've got for the deep in news. So under 10 minutes, we're done. Joey, what's going on, dog? You've got a delay. Actually, no, you're totally muted on your mic. I'm not hearing you at all. So let me go back through the notes while you figure that out. Derek, let's see. Ed, Kevin, what's going on? 619, keep tokens the same. I think you were talking about the Helium HIP 138. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I am on this. And once Joey figures out his sound, we'll get back and figure it out. And Joey, if you have to pop out and come back in, that's totally fine too.
Cool. How we doing? Yeah,
Oh
I
yeah,
can
there
see
we
the whole
are.
thing moving
Yep.
now.
5x5.
Yeah.
Yep. You're good now.
Yeah. AirPods now. You don't get the fancy mic, but I'll figure that out later.
Yeah. Lee's been looking at getting a mic for some of her TikTok paleo treat stuff. And was looking at these like Rode fancy mics. Yeah, something like that.
I'm a fan of this one.
Yeah.
Throws in a backpack. It's good.
But it doesn't work, so.
No.
So it looks good. Let's see.
It works sometimes.
Ed said did an impromptu Helium IoT mobile commercial to middle schoolers shilling a NASA coding challenge. Oh, cool. Yeah. Nice. Ed, so we're on opposite ends of the spectrums. I'm talking to USC and you're talking to middle schoolers. Hell yeah. Let's get them all.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yep. Where do you want to dive in here? We've got token discussion. We've got this education stuff that we've been sort of, oh yeah, got to do that.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of things we can get into.
Yeah. Let's do, let's kick it off with this education thing. And then no, I'm sure people are excited about the token thing. I don't actually have that much to say on it. So let's start with that and maybe we can burn through that and then we'll do the more interesting stuff to me personally, which is education.
Yeah, I probably don't have as much to say as, like a buy would or somebody that's like deep in the weeds on. I try to avoid some of those channels because otherwise my days would disappear really quickly. But the thing that I guess the anecdote that I want to add to this conversation, and you've probably experienced this too, but like when we're at Breakpoint or Consensus or whatever, you get these like family fund guys come up to you and be like, oh, I want to like deploy this capital or, whatever, right? Have you had these conversations or is this just me? Like,
it's not so much for me, but yeah, people do ask me, they're like, oh, what should I do here? And how does this work? It's not always specific to Helium. Obviously I'm not a Helium employee, but yeah, I've had these kinds of conversations. You're like, go ahead. What do you got?
Yeah. Well, and I guess that, the common one, and I'm thinking back to Singapore, right? This guy comes up to me and is like, oh, I want to, deploy this investment in mobile. Like, do I buy mobile or do I buy HNT? Or like, what's the, how are these things move? Like, what's the deal here, right? I'm also interested in like the IoT network, but like that's a different investment. And it tends to be the case that it's like hard to give them a straight answer because of like we can't predict what all the markets are going to do. That's just not like how things work.
Yeah.
And so it tends to lead to a lot of confusion. And I think that's where like I personally get behind this idea of unifying these tokens again and look at that scenario of somebody trying to invest in mobile, like in the current token world where mobile has its own token. If they go buy mobile tokens, IoT is just sort of left to the wind in whatever it is that they're doing. And so it brings both of these things along that same story. And I think it's going to be a good unification for the overall Helium project, right? To be able to talk about these things in sort of one sentence. There's, of course, a lot of details in there, like protocol scores and treasuries and all this other stuff. Like that's probably not worth digging into on this call because it's also like a rapidly changing conversation, it seems, in the discussion channel. But I'm excited to see that evolving because it was one of the things from Abai's Helium V3 proposal that I was a little taken aback when it was removed in the sort of initial proposal. But then talking with Chris Farabee in Singapore, it was cool to see how how spicy he was feeling on driving that forward. And sure enough, here we are just a couple months later and he's got it out there.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where maybe the super short version is that shifting to two tokens was a mistake, and now we've got to shift back. And for those of us who don't like change, it's just like, fuck, why don't we just roll with the tokens we have? Because then we have to explain everything all over again. Jesus, I can't get my words out right. But it's probably the right thing to do to go back to HNT and, you know.
Yeah. The thing is we haven't figured out how to explain it in the current world. Like I've got decks that I've done in front of like Solana hackathons and stuff like that. And it's just
Mhm.
this crazy ass chart of like, well, this goes to that, and then data credit burn happens, and that goes in. It's like
Yeah,
you, you've lost them.
yeah, yeah. So
That just needs to be like three dots on a line.
yeah, or maybe one dot, like you just earn HNT. Call me
Beautiful.
fucking
Right.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. Travis has got 6.5 hours left for IoT working group elections. So if you're in there, put your votes in.
Yeah. You stole my note, Travis. It was in there. I was gonna get there.
Oh, Travis, nice
Yeah.
work. I put in a grant for the IoT working group, but I haven't heard back on it yet. So I think Neil was saying that he wanted to put in more grants for more like explaining stuff. But I was like, I'll see if I get this one first.
Yep. Yeah, we've largely been holding off on any grant decisions until this election is through, because it's basically just three, four of us in the working group right
Dude,
now, and it feels like
let's
it'd
get
be
these
a
grants approved now before someone comes in and
yeah.
tries to stop it.
Send it.
Although I
Yeah.
always think it's good.
Yeah, I'm feeling really good about the prospects of the future of the working group. There's a lot of awesome candidates that are going to be coming in. For some clarity there, it's what is it, 6 out of 7 or 5 out of 6 of that list of people that's in the election will join the working group. So
Cool.
that's going to be like a whole new seat of people.
Yeah. Ooh, right on, Ed. I like this
Yeah.
picture too, Ed. This with you and a nice river behind you. That's awesome. Let's see, Derek, can you give a reader's digest of why they want to switch to HNT? Yes, I can, because it's much simpler to explain that all of your different things earn one token, which is HNT, versus IoT devices earn IoT and mobile devices earn mobile. And here's how the mobile is calculated, and here's how the value is. Like, it's just a huge pain in the ass instead of saying, fuck it, all of your shit earns one token. So,
Yeah. I'm trying to, I wish I could like scribble on the screen and you just like erase those other two tokens. It's
yeah,
like it just gets a
yeah.
lot simpler.
Well, we can
Yeah.
just do this.
Hey, there it is. Yeah.
So that's the difference. Here's the reader's digest. We're going from this to this.
Couldn't have done it better. Yeah.
There we go. Let's see. So that's the HIP 138 stuff. If a buyer wants to come on, I've actually totally forgotten to even invite him.
Mm.
He used to have a standing invite to this call, but he whatever canceled it so many times that I think I was like, all right, fine. Whenever you want to come on, you're welcome to come on. But yeah,
I'll hit them up about it.
cool.
Next week could actually be a good time to do something like that
Cool.
if we're
Yeah.
not doing a community call. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's see. So let's talk about the education efforts because I'm seeing inside of anyone that we are, or that group is also reaching out. And those guys are a client of mine to a bunch of educational institutions. Clearly, Helium's doing the same. They sent me up to USC. You're getting sent out to this Midwest blockchain thing. You went to Ann Arbor. Talk me through the kind of push and deepens to whatever, infiltrate, penetrate, whatever it is, these educational institutions.
yeah. So what I'll say is like I caught a pretty common vibe of people trying to make crypto make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone that's in university right now, like crypto has existed their entire like conscious life, right? More or
Okay.
less. Like it's Bitcoin's been out there for a while. So it's been around. It's been this like constant din of like news and interest, and some people are jumping in, full force, and they're finding their space in, any sort of segment of crypto. But there's a lot of folks that I was talking to in Ann Arbor at the Midwest Blockchain Conference that were not in crypto. Maybe they're in finance, maybe they're in, some other study, and they're just like, yeah, I'm here with my friend. I'm trying to like understand what this thing's about. And sometimes the friend is like into crypto, but they're still trying to figure out the space. And I think the thing that was really exciting is being able to explain DeepIn as effectively a reason why all of this stuff exists, and it helps them make crypto make sense. And so the panel that I did in Ann Arbor was with Yev from DIMO,
Mm-hmm.
and it was all just about, what is DeepIn? What are these projects doing? Why are they existing? Why blockchain, right? And I think it's something that we don't spend a lot of time talking about. Obviously, on this show, like we've just kind of all accepted blockchain is the way to do these things, but then you get confronted with these questions.
Yep.
Um, and Shawshank was our moderator for this panel. He was a member of the blockchain club
Mm-hmm.
there, and he just was like very on point. It was great. Um, but to speak about like why blockchain, it's like you can build just completely bespoke guidance into a token incentive mechanism and craft a network to the design of the outcomes that you're looking for. Like, and this is what you spend every day trying to like work on with these companies, right? Like,
Yep.
how do you build token models that achieve like outcomes of utility? Um, and then like, what does that utility look like? And so we had hotspots operating in these auditoriums and people were connecting to them. Like the stuff works. And then you can point to 300,000 people used Helium last, Thursday or whatever it was without
Yep.
even realizing it.
Yeah.
And so it starts to like, you see these light bulbs go off. There was a guy in the audience that was like the dad of a girl that was there. And he just, like, he came up and he was like all excited. He's like, oh, I do X, Y, and Z. And like, I work on this stuff. And like, I didn't even realize this was possible. So, um, it's it's always very exciting to see those light bulbs go off. That's
Yeah.
basically my takeaway.
Yeah. Yeah. It's super cool. I think that, we're getting to the space as DeepIn and crypto enters the mainstream. Due, I think in large part to these recent elections where there's been this big kind of flip on the government stance towards crypto. No matter how you voted, like that, I would like to keep most of that off the show. But just looking at the facts is that currently we have this administration that's pretty anti-crypto, and it looks like we're going to have an administration that's pretty pro-crypto, and that's going to make some big changes. I've seen a bunch of funny memes about all of the kind of retail investors coming to invest in blockchain. But it does mean that we're going to have to answer these questions about why would you use crypto? Like, what's so great about blockchain and tokens and the rest of it and incentives? And that was certainly one of the questions that I got asked up at USC and it was more along the lines of, hey, these academics want to do serious research, right? How can you convince me that this crypto stuff is serious and that they're going to be doing research that is meaningful and not just chasing like meme speculation bullshit? And that's me putting, specific words in their mouth that they didn't say. But it's like, hey, if these academics are going to look at this, you have to present some kind of like real problem for them to investigate and to do research on, to put research dollars and resources towards. So I think the thing there is it makes it so how do we explain to those academics and to the rest of the world what the real world use case of crypto is? And in a lot of time, a lot of cases, like there isn't one. Is that there's been a ton of like bullshit speculation, and it's been it's really hurt the crypto brand is the way to look at it. Like to face it pretty honestly is that there's been a bunch of these pump and dump schemes that haven't helped crypto at all. But they also may be part of the whole, maturing of the ecosystem piece. And what we're coming into now is like, oh, there is a real world use case. And that real world use case is you use DeepIn to test out a business plan, this business model of last resort where no one knew until Helium did it what it would be like to have a global LoRaWAN with hundreds of thousands of gateways. Now we know. Now we've got to figure out like, okay, how do you actually use them? And to Amir's point on X, Nova hasn't figured out how to use it profitably. So he said, hey, this is a business thing. Like we're running a business. We're going to focus our efforts on mobile because we can see how to run that profitably. We can't see how to do the IoT stuff. I'm on the opposite side where I think, well, not on the opposite side, but I think it's worth it to continue to investigate the IoT stuff and see what we can do there. But I mean, it is this thing. It's like, yeah, you use this system, use this whole business model to explore something that you couldn't otherwise explore because the CapEx is too great. So.
Yeah. Goodness, oh yeah, I got nothing to add to that.
Okay.
Spot on. Yeah.
I didn't know that this was, is this true, Kevin? There are more Americans that own crypto than dogs?
I've seen that stat. I don't,
Huh.
there's a lot of dogs out there,
There's a
but
fucking shitload of dogs. I mean,
yeah.
well, and I guess if you value it, I'm certainly not going to value my crypto over my dogs, but yeah, I have more
Fair.
tokens than I have dogs. That's a fact.
That is, yep.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I think we're also from like cities. Everyone around us has dogs. And you get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, people choose, raise kids versus raise dogs. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. I think this thing is kind of worth going after or addressing is this idea that IoT is no good or that it's broken or that we haven't figured it out. And I think the first part is that this is correct. Like we haven't figured out a super profitable way to do IoT for Helium. I'd love to think that that's not true. I'd love to think that someone somewhere is like absolutely crushing with it and making millions and millions of dollars, but I haven't yet seen that business where they're doing it at a huge level. I've seen businesses where it's like they're using it. You know, you look at what's the whiskey thing, Joey, that we've worked with a bunch,
Access.
Baxis, where they're using it. It's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't think that's,
Mhm.
and nothing against Baxis, but I don't think that that use case is this incredibly badass business yet. It may be. But I think there's these things coming in. And when I was talking to the IDO folks, AYDO, they started showing me this path between IoT sensor data that is real and that all these different AI models that need that real data. And that may end up being the thing that makes
Mhm.
all of this IoT data super profitable is that these models need that data. And all of a sudden, instead of having, needing a specific temperature in a specific valley in, the middle of California that otherwise no one would care about, all of a sudden that gets to be pretty valuable just because it's actual real data. It's not synthetic data. I mean, that may be one way it goes.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'll take the opposite stance. I guess we'll just do this debate style, and I'll say wrong. It's good.
Okay.
Um, you know, like if you look at the numbers, there is growth in the IoT network.
Yep.
Um,
Okay.
and if you look over the past, was it 10 months or so? It's a little noisy because like weird things have happened with Foundation Console at various times. If you just cut straight through those and ignore them in the stats, you get a pretty solid line. And it's linear. That's the challenge, right? Like we're in crypto, we expect to see just, wild fluctuations and things. But it is growing. And it, by my evaluation, is growing at the rate of LoRaWAN broadly. And so we don't have we don't have a crypto problem. We don't have, whatever that is. Like it's an IoT challenge in the sort
Sure.
of macro space. And this is in NB-IoT, this is in private networks, this is all that stuff. That's where those challenges are. Um, we do see customers paying, $30,000 and stuff to like get access to consoles and data credits. I know you'd love to tap into some of that. Um, like that stuff exists. People do find value in it. We're doing a better job of representing the coverage of the network. Um, and that seems to be paying off so far. There's 3 new OUIs in the queue and it's Wednesday. Those came in yesterday, so like Tuesday. Um, Last week, I think we onboarded like 4 new OUIs. Like there is interest, and I'm starting to like unweave the pattern of where these people are coming from, and like why'd you wait so long?
Yeah.
Um,
What do you
but
think it
people
is?
are continually. I think it's a lot of people just have been tinkering and building. A guy came up to me in my co-working space that I gave 2 sensors to a year ago, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna plug those things in. Can you show me how to like do the onboard?" And I, of course, pointed him to Medio Scientific and my documentation that's in staging that isn't complete. And he's just like, "This is awesome." And so I fully expect to go into the office today, and he'll be like, "Yeah, I sent some payloads, and I started building the asset tracker that I want to put in my van," like that kind of thing.
Badass.
Um, so like the cycles there are long. That's, we're banging that when button, kind of like trying to figure out when stuff's going to happen. But I see a lot of people building. I see a lot of interest. I see corporate interest. I see private interest. In Ann Arbor, I talked to a guy who I thought was just going to be a total cold lead. Grabbed coffee with him before the conference, and Turns out he has 10 hotspots and he's like deploying sensors and he's using Senate and he checks the roaming button in Senate. And so he's using Helium, via a separate LNS, but he's directly using Helium.
Yep.
Um, and that's what makes these solutions work for them because they need that coverage. Uh, so it's, oh, and then, I've got roaming people that are expanding from the US to Europe. Like all of this stuff is happening. It takes a lot of work. And I think we've talked about this on the show before, like, is the network charging enough? And that has been a hot conversation. And to be entirely honest, like I keep flip-flopping between, yeah, and this is part of the challenge, right? Like, should we charge more for the data transfer that is happening? Are we doing enough to justify, a 10x multiplier on a message or a 5x or a dollar seat fee per year or month or whatever that looks like?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and those are hard questions to answer because on one hand, maybe we're charging exactly enough, and then we can just scale based on that. On the other hand, like maybe we just need to like say this is kind of the network that we're going to be living with, and we'll see linear growth sort of over some period of time, and we just need to make sure that more is being delivered to I see some questions coming through, but to the hotspots that are operating them. And I'm not entirely convinced that, rewards going up or down or sideways or whatever has an acute effect on active hotspots.
Nope.
Um,
I think you're bang on here, and maybe what's happening, Joey, is that we're agreeing on this piece and explaining it in different ways. Is I'm certainly not saying that I'm going to stop fiddling with IoT because it's been a super fascinating, like super fun thing to do, and my desk is covered with all these different devices. I'm like, oh, I gotta shoot this thing for MetSci, how to change your dev EUI on an LHT65. Like, it's a personally fascinating thing for me. I think what's happening is that we're making the transition from crazy speculative project in crypto to actually useful thing. And in every project, when that happens, the amount that the miners earn will be super low. That's just that's how it works. If you want to look at the economics of the whole thing, like the whole reason to get in early to these projects is you earn a ton on the miners. But the whole reason to get into the projects for the long term is the utility of the network. And those two things will just change over time. Like, that's almost by definition how the whole thing works. And so anyone who's thinking, I'm going to get into this project for the long-term earnings from the miners, you're missing out how it works. Like, if you want to get into it for the earnings, get in early or don't get in. If you want to get into it for the utility, get in whenever you can and start using the thing. And I think that's the hard truth that a lot of folks in crypto who are used to the pump and dump, like, oh, I made $1 billion on this one, $20 investment. That's what they want. But with all of these actual real world applications, in my 46 years of living on the planet, I've never seen a reliable like thing where it just makes a shitload of money for no, little to no investment. Like, that just doesn't
Yeah.
happen. And so you've
Yeah.
got to look very clearly and say, like, okay, why am I getting to this, and what am I doing here? And maybe in the best of all worlds is you get in early, you make all of your tokens, you're super happy, and then you learn how to use the network, and it's personally fascinating for you. Or you can turn it into something that's profitable for your business, and you continue to use it, and the value that you kind of get out of it changes over time, but remains high enough that you stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think one of the challenges, and I've been seeing this, we get compared to the IoT network gets compared to the mobile network a lot because they sit right next to each other.
yep,
And on the mobile network, we see carrier partnerships, offload happening, dollars are flowing, right?
yep,
There's a lot of value in those things. Um, Part of me wonders, like, so today, BD efforts it's kind of just me.
yeah,
Um, like a lot of the, inbound happens. I, spent a lot of last year going to conferences with Amy. We do all these, discussions with people. We go to their booths. We'd be like, hey, why aren't you using Helium? And they're like, hey, we totally should. Let's go plug it in.
yep,
And then it comes down to like, there's just not enough time in the day to go activate every single one of these people. And so it raises the question, like, how do we sort of scale those BD efforts? Like, is that something that we go and activate the community on? Do we just codify this stuff into documentation and just sort of say, like, here it is, go self-serve? I think my sort of some people will do that if they're smart and they're driven and they see the value, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people need to be sold on the vision and the value, um, or even to be handheld on the integrations and things like that. And trust me, I do plenty of handholding on integrations.
Yeah, no, you've been super good on that. Certainly we've both of us have done a fair amount of that. I think that if we look at the kind of strategic side of this for Helium Foundation, is that there's no other business I know that doesn't have like an enormous demand side pull that just says, fuck it, we'll leave the marketing up to our community. Like that seems to me to be like a fundamental problem that, and a fundamental mistake that Helium has made is as they went through the bear market, and maybe there's no other way to do this. I mean, it's super easy to Monday morning quarterback this, be like, oh, I would have double bagged it.
Mm.
There's no way to know, but I think there's also no way to avoid that as we went through the bear market, all of the folks on the comm side, with the exception of you and I think Artie, were dropped off on Helium. And so now, as 619 has said, the only time you see stuff about IoT is in the Discord. And there's no way that the entire addressable market is checking the Helium Discord to see what's new in IoT. And so
Sure.
I think to this Mr. Unbox point, like I typically don't like to get along with the folks who are anti or pretty negative, but I think this is right. You need a correctly spelled Salesforce to push this stuff out. And I know when I've talked to folks on the working group where they've said like, oh, we want you to do educational videos. That's cool. That's great. The stuff that I'm going to do just because of the regular deep in consulting is so profitable makes me making a video pretty expensive for Helium. But maybe that's just a cost you got to bear, and you've got to hire someone like Brandy or whoever it was doing marketing to say, yeah, we're going to put serious effort into this, and we're going to back that effort with money and make sure that people know about this pretty amazing worldwide network that can do these things that couldn't be done in 2020. So it's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, you won't get these street teams without incentivization. And I think the interesting thing here that is just going to be, open for debate for a long time is the incentivization. Like it was almost it led the Helium Foundation folks down the wrong path of thinking that people would just do like biz dev on their own because the tokens were so valuable at the beginning, and they never
I mean, part
realized.
of me disagrees with that,
Yeah,
though.
go ahead.
Like this idea that you won't be an advocate without an incentive. Um, I mean, like, I'm gonna point that Teague, maybe you should hop up here. We can talk about this. But like, I'm gonna jab you a little bit. But like, he was an advocate for TTN and ran like a local TTN meetup group, and they weren't paying him. I can't imagine they were paying him. Maybe tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, but
Um,
I think that the
but like,
pushback there is like, how many Teagues do you have? How many, not to toot my own horn, but how many Gristle Kings do you have? Like, there's one of me, there's one of Teague. Who else is
yeah,
out there who's creating content that is pro Helium, pro this stuff? And in TTN, maybe it's been around longer and there's more of it. Like I get on their forums and they're super helpful to each other. But
mhm.
I look at this and think, hey, if we want this thing to be global and we're looking at and to be super successful, there's got to be some assets put into the marketing side.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just
On the flip side, like, there's more inbound that I can handle right now. So that's
yeah,
part of like why we're not saying this actively, like trying to court people in here. Um, I'll go to the next like, smart cities conference or whatever once
yep.
I've dried up my like stack of business cards. But um,
Yeah,
yeah,
but I mean, maybe that's a thing where you just look at, and I think Joey, like you and I are going back and forth on opposite sides of this, just as like a nice public debate. we
yep,
both of us like the Helium network. Both of us are going to keep using it. Both of us think the IoT
yeah,
stuff is super cool. Just so, if you're watching this and this is your first time, you're like, God, this Gristle guy is an asshole and he's anti Helium. That is generally not true. So if you're getting more inbound than you can handle, that should be a strong signal for the foundation to hire someone else to help you with that inbound and make sure that we activate those people. Would be the way
yeah,
that I'd look
and
at that if I was, forced to run the Helium Foundation business, which I don't want to
yeah.
do. It's a big, big, complicated thing.
hopefully I'll be doing that in 20 minutes. We'll see
Yeah.
how this goes. So yeah, yeah,
Let's
it's on
see.
the calendar.
Oh, have you got something going on in 20 minutes? I know.
Yeah, yeah. It's just at 10 Pacific here, talking to somebody to hopefully carry some of that load. So
Oh, cool. Super cool. So
yeah,
maybe you are hiring people. Maybe I'm just behind and not read in.
but I'm not sure what Scott's cooking here. I'm going to talk to somebody though. So
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I think the chat is getting this right. And this is interesting with Ed is that Best Buy is interested in creating videos on devices. So it's like, yeah, get them to do it. But at the same time, if I look at my own business where I've got this deep in consulting business with Max and I talk to all of these projects all the time. And when they ask us how much it is, we have never once said, well, we just really like your project, so we'll do it for free. It's always like,
Hmm.
here's the fiat component, here's the token. Like this, it's going to cost money.
Hmm.
And I think the same thing should be true. I'd like to see the same thing true for Helium. And there's a part of it where it's like, I've been creating state of the networks. I think I don't know what the time is now, maybe 2 years. I'm pretty sure it's the longest running show covering Helium in general. I don't think, actually, no, I have never gotten directly paid for producing state of the network. So maybe there are volunteers like me who are willing to do this. I've certainly got paid to do other things for Helium, but I
Hmm.
also think like how many other shows are there doing it? I don't know. There's another show doing this stuff. So it seems to me like, all right, there's got to be, and maybe this is what the IoT working group gets to do is say like, all right, cool, we're going to put some tokens and money towards this.
Hmm.
So let's
Yeah,
see.
I mean, we're going to keep pushing. Um, sort of wrapping this up, like I just go vote on the working group election. I think it's we've got
uh,
capital to work with there, and so
yeah.
like your belief in like whatever it is that you're, yeah, I mean
Is
this
that what it
shaped
is?
up
Is
as like
this what
a
it's like, Kevin? Who's
I don't know
JD and
which
who's
one I
Tim?
am, but
You son
yeah,
of a bitch.
yeah. Uh, but I like the way this conversation shaped up. Like you kind of the formal debate is a nice way to approach something,
Yeah,
um, as formal as that was.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, there is opportunity to sort of make some of those impacts via the working group. So that's my sort of call to action out of that whole conversation. But yeah, throw that other card up there.
Oh, the Travis one, this new Explorer.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
the update there is a bunch of stuff is built. We're I'm working through a couple of weird caching issues with Helium Geek, who's doing the analysis side of things. Um, that'll get solved, and then on the other end of things on the mobile network, we're trying to clear up all of the data pipeline and build stuff that's a little bit more current and fresh. So all of the data backing side parts of this need to be cleaned up so that it can kind of hit some scale and not just like work in staging. So that is still in progress and coming, but it looks really pretty because we got the little heat magic in there.
Yeah, love it. I love to see when it comes down the pipe.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, for folks who haven't looked at Andy Humphrey's stuff, go check him out. I'm sure you can click on his thing in here and track him down on YouTube. But he makes a ton of good videos on. It's all like what is it? Irrigation stuff. Is what Andy does.
Cool.
So yeah, go check out his videos. He's got a super nice video set up. I know when we first saw it, Lee was like, "Oh, he's got a setup like yours." Like, I think his is like a little bit more professional.
And here I am with my phone on a cheap tripod. So
Yeah, but it
yeah.
looks. I mean, the thing is, the phones are so good now. I'm shooting this video for a local paragliding club, and I was talking to a guy who's done video production his whole life, and he's like, "Hey, if you want, you can shoot it on your fancy camera, but you're way better off shooting it on your phone because it'll be much easier for you, and the quality will be indistinguishable on YouTube."
Yep, totally.
So let's see. Travis is asking, is the Explorer going to have an API?
No.
Will it blend?
All of the data that is going to be in that Explorer is coming from Oracle's that API I mean obviously it has to have some sort of interface for us to make the thing work, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not the intent that it's going to be a public API. Um, we do operate the entity API. I think it's called the Hotspot API in documentation. I've been meaning to rename that to the entity API because it's a little more accurate, but that's totally public and you can bash the hell out of it because it's nice and heavily cached
Yeah,
on a daily basis.
badass.
I do bad things to it frequently. So I've been doing some analysis for this data credit pricing conversation.
Brad. Super
Yeah.
cool. Well, it sounds like you've got a call in 15 minutes. I know I've got this deep in state that I got to prep for with Marcus at XYO. I don't
Cool.
want to take up everybody's time the whole time. I think we had a good combo today. I'd like to make sure we kind of wrap it up and say like it's super good to address the issues around IoT, mobile, the cost of DC, like what's going to happen in HIP 138, these tokens going together. I would like
Mhm.
to think these are the kind of discussions that we keep in public where it's super polite and both sides are like, hey, this is, and maybe that was a reference to the JD Vance and the Tim Waltz thing. We're like clearly on opposite sides but being polite. I don't think we're quite as opposite on this, Joey,
Maybe
because
that
both
was
of
it.
us, yeah, both of us like the,
We're both believers in the thing. Yeah, no, I think it was a great way to approach the conversation. Hopefully it landed for everyone else that was kind of listening. Maybe
yeah,
you need to get leave comments. Yeah.
yeah,
Frederick liked it.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Cool. All
Yeah.
right, dude. Well, shit, super good to see you. I think I'll probably hit you up on this LHT65 thing because there's been a bunch of questions on it in the Medio Scientific channel over on the GK server. There's this guy that's
Great.
trying to change his dev UI. He's got a newer version of the tool, and so it's been super cool to figure out like, oh shit, it's been so long since I learned that I could connect directly to a sensor and make some changes in it that I'd forgotten that
Mhm.
not everybody knows that. So it's like that's the next MetSci video coming out is like how to connect wires to your sensor, make some changes through AT commands, and just have that much more control over what you're doing. Kind of cool.
Awesome.
So,
Man, I've just got like a million things I want to say about IoT stuff.
oh, what do you got, dude? I'll
So
stick
many,
around.
so many cool things. Oh, the guy that came up to me yesterday, he said you can read serial off of a Flipper Zero, and so he was like it's a battery, it's a serial monitor. He plugged his little device in there, and then he was able to walk around and like see the status of like sending payload and stuff like that. Just like
That's
so.
cool.
Anyway, you talking about your debugging your LHD65 stuff? Like I need to get myself a Flipper and do a little tutorial on that because that's all just like handy stuff.
Oh, do you? Yeah, do you not have one? I would have thought you'd have one. No,
I've
that's
held out.
God,
It's
Joey.
yeah.
Are they now
No,
hard to get? I forget. I bought one right when they came out.
I'm sure I could get one on eBay or something. It can't be that bad.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
built
yeah.
a
Yeah.
buttload of those things.
The flippers
Um,
and the rabbits were the two things. I think the other thing that's going to be
yeah.
interesting to see is, and I've got a ton of questions about this that I don't know anything about, is what happens when we start to get like the Raspberry Pi and then whatever these like, what's the Google Coral thing? But to me, I just think of
Hmm.
it as like an AI brain thing. What happens
Hmm.
when we start plugging those two things together and say like, hey, help me figure out this sensor? And there's kind of like, this is totally magic bullshit, wavy hand, hand waving stuff. Is what happens when that thing can be like the on-site chat GPT and be like, oh, let me just handle all this stuff and you just talk to the sensor like you're a human. So rather than sending an AT command like AT plus dev EUI question mark equals, 1274, it's just like, hey, can you change the dev EUI to what's on my screen right now? And it's like, oh yeah, sure. And does it. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, AT commands are just like the most like human abusive thing.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
interface,
Yeah.
it's the opposite of human language. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I just almost entirely broke that 5G modem that I bought using AT commands. And then the guy I bought it from was like, oh, you need to put in this AT command. And I looked at it, I was like, dude, how the fuck would I ever have figured out that that was the command I needed to like get access to the modem again? Yeah.
Yeah. And then AT command version numbers, one version does one thing, but does something else in the other. It's a nightmare. But
Yeah.
I,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, this is the thing that I think Travis and and this is probably what I'll end up using as the bus pirate. Cause I think
Mm,
for, if you're going to get into this kind of nerd business of IoT, there are two ways to think about it. One is like, what's the absolute cheapest thing you can get, which is, what is it, Travis? Like an STM V3 or something on Amazon for $20. Or you get this bus pirate, which I think is like 50 or $60 that does way more. And you can do all kinds of shit. It's like just spend double the money, get the $70 or $60 thing, and then have access to this whole fleet of different abilities to work in general with IoT devices. So that's going to be the
yeah.
push. But
Um,
anything
Man,
else you
I
got?
want to get more docs out there. There's just, yeah.
if only there was a foundation that had some money that could just pay for someone to help you with these docs, Joey. I feel like in an alternate
Oh
world where that
no.
exists.
Well, I mean, it's gonna. I need if we're gonna throw money at stuff, I need to know that it's gonna be good contributions, and that's where the little catch-22 happens on that. Because like
Yeah.
I ran the Scribes hackathon and we got 99% garbage. It was Chat GPT, like throw something into Chat GPT, crank something out. There's my docs, and I was like, well, cool. Now I get to edit all of that, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
gonna
Not
take me more
helpful.
time to edit. Yeah, it's like I need somebody that owns that stuff
That's a
and
good point, because
is
early on,
knowledgeable.
and this stuff is public, is that there were some Helium grants back when Helium was still HNT, that went to folks that was a shitload of money that never,
Mhm.
things never got produced. I forget the specific company, and I probably shouldn't call them out anyway, but whatever. Let's say it's a door sensor. They got like a boatload of money to build this thing, and they just, for whatever reason, never built it. And
Mhm.
so I think that kind of
Or
stuff, I can see on your side the challenge of that, where on my side, I'm like, just fucking release more money and people will jump for it. And you're like, dude, if we just put out 100 grand or 200 grand, whatever it is, some asshole will come along, scoop it up and do nothing. Like that's because the incentive is to do as little as possible to make as much as possible.
and that's the operation side of grants that
Yeah.
we found to be a really, really big challenge. And people sit in crypto looking for these grants just to like
Yep. Just to burn
collect.
through them. Yeah. And I think you had
Yeah.
Clarissa working it for a while. Um,
Yep.
but even then there's stuff. And I think to Siegfried's point, how do you hire someone? I mean, how do you find this person and make sure they're good?
The
And if
the
there's,
evalu like it's hard because like so the best to Siegfried's point, the best person, the sort of class of person that I came up with was like um assistant teachers or like TAs,
yep.
who are writing like entire guides on, X, Y, or Z, that would do this kind of work, and they would do it well. They put the energy into it. It's a I've certainly like chased a lot of folks on this, but we just haven't had anything really stick. I've got a couple of things that I'm going to be bouncing off of Scott later today, that maybe those pan out. But it's it's a it's challenging. Hopefully you can kind of see the two ends of that.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I certainly can see it because I've been a grant recipient, and I know it's like it feels like when you're a good actor, and you're working super hard, it's pretty easy to get grant money as long as you have a reasonable proposition. But I could
yeah.
also see if I was a bad actor and thinking like a criminal, it would also be pretty easy to be like, oh, I've got this really cool thing and I'm going to show off how it works and it's going to be so big. And then you get the money
Mhm.
and you're like, actually, fuck you, I'm out of here. Which is maybe
Or
not what anyone ever did, but be pretty easy
you
to do
write a
it.
grant for somebody, you'd be like, here's the thing, here's the scope, here's the exact deliverables,
Yep.
and you're like, you're going to get paid at the end of this, and then they just never do it, and now you're 3 months down the road and the thing's still not done because
Yep.
you slotted that out for that person to do it.
Yep.
And like, like I should make them pay me if they don't do it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I don't see how that would work where you put up some money and if you don't get it, you forfeit that because the
It
grant.
won't, but like it's it's part of the challenge of the thing of working in this sort of like volunteer community grant space. It's like
Yep.
you're not really held responsible to like execute or deliver. It's just like a carrot at the end of a stick that hopefully they're hungry for.
Yep.
So
And I think maybe the wrap up piece on this is something like what I found from writing grants is if you make enough milestones and you make the milestones make sense so they can like pay you and you've done something.
mhm.
And then what I've also found is make sure you get paid enough as the person replying for the grant that you're actually excited to do it. Because I
Mhm.
made some mistakes early on where I was like, oh, I'll just do it for free and I'll just put in enough grant money for the sensors. And then when it came to doing it, I had to basically justify to my partner like, hey, I'm not going to be doing any work on a regular business that makes us money in order for me to do work on this other business that's exciting to me that makes us no money. So it's like you've got to
Mhm.
put enough in there that it's worth your time to put towards it so that you can then, spend the time to do a good job.
Yeah.
So, all right. And on that happy note, Joey, super good to see you. Good to see so many people
Yep.
coming on and watching the whole thing. We'll see if we can get a buy on next time to talk more about the HIP 138, the returned HNT. That'd be fun. And I'll see you next next week.
Yeah, fun times.
Yeah.
Take it easy.
Leaks.
Bye.